Okay, I believe that's everyone in. Anyone else that joins later, will be sending a copy of this webinar to everyone on the email list that signed up anyway, so they'll be able to catch up with us. So let's begin this morning and this afternoon, sorry, for the people that are in MENA. This is going out to a lot of people across different countries all over the world. Please feel free to share this with anyone else that you think it's relevant for. And this webinar today is brought to you by myself, Jay Khan at Push, and a good friend of Push's, Steve Copestake, marketing veteran, over 35 years experience. And I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about himself before he begins to talk to you all about branding. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Jay. Good morning. Thanks, everyone, ever so much for joining. Jay's kind use of the word veteran is a crude shorthand for Steve is very old, but I suppose I'm either extremely experienced or it's taking me quite a while to grasp the basics. But let's go with experience. 35 years, as Jay says, blue chip agency and client experience around the world. Companies, some of your favorites, you know, United Biscuits, PepsiCo, Walt Disney, Unilever, BSkyB, quite a lot of consultancy worldwide as well. It says on my bio, I'm an expert in strategic brand positioning, revenue growth, and business transformation, which I'll settle for. So my aim here is to get you to think again about an aspect of business practice that certainly has occupied me for a very long time. In my defense, it's a pretty broad topic. So in the limited time available today, this is framed merely as an overview, I suppose. I'm very happy, of course, to get into more detail as a follow-up if there's interest in doing that. This discussion is about what I see as an absolute imperative to every business, but it's something that still gets overlooked or lost in the day-to-day. So here's the key message. I say that the most important factor in better marketing is whether or not you can define and then project your brand identity through every single facet of your communication and behavior. So approaching that challenge in an organized, practical, simplified way requires an approach and a discipline that I call brand thinking. Now, brand thinking is about whether or not you can apply a core defining thought about your company in order to realize a long-term commercial benefit. Now, if you can do that, the outcome will always be a more robust marketing strategy and plan, messaging that connects, and significantly a much better return on every pound and dollar spent. So we all know that markets are becoming sort of ever more competitive, and media in all its forms is noisier and more fragmented. You don't need either myself or a webinar to tell you that. Sales leads, conversion, loyalty, all even more difficult day to day. And that's why getting your brand thinking right makes it much easier for advisors like Push, for example, to make even more informed advertising recommendations, as they are about to tell you. That said, I believe there's something else very basic at play, and that something else is quite a compounding factor alongside all the noise and the other struggles that we face. It's a lack of attention given to the core marketing principle of differentiation. And this is an uncomfortable truth that I see this all the time. You may think that you have a strong identity, but if you cannot reflect that brand meaning in your communication and your behavior, you risk creating a lack of connection. A lack of connection being the gap between what we think we're saying and what people are actually hearing. So not having connected brand meaning will leave you open to the curse of inefficiency and unspecified waste. Inconsistent messaging and tone, inconsistent behavior in the case of service businesses, for example. These sorts of things have quite grave consequences. Lower growth rates, loss of revenue, but worse than that, for the marketing purist, you end up with marketing planning and activity that falls short at each point on the customer journey. Building awareness, converting, encouraging loyalty and advocacy, all of those good things. So think of our key message in those terms: a waste of money. The return on your marketing investment will be suboptimal if what you do and what you say is not fundamentally anchored on your brand meaning. Every marketing action has to amplify the essential purpose and personality of your business, product, or service. Now, that's easy for me to say, but of course there's a catch. Uncovering and then expressing your brand essence requires sustained self-honesty. So after this session today, ask yourself, do we have that singularity of thought? Are we able to say what is the truth of our business? And in my experience, properly defining that truth requires 3 steps. Those steps, and I'm going to go through them now, are having the right mindset at the right moment and then applying the right process. So let's look at those things for a short while. Firstly, when is a good time to review and focus on your brand meaning? The short answer is any time that you can. It doesn't have to be at an obvious fork in the road, although it seems self-evident that certain moments lend themselves to brand reflection, perhaps a merger or a structural change or an expansion into a new sector, geography or product line. Maybe your business just has a sense of brand tiredness. So some of those things may apply to you. And with so much current emphasis, of course, on digital channels for distribution and advertising, where, if you think about it, there are only a few seconds to make a connection, companies like Push can much more easily help you to optimize the return if you already have the basis of a brand message that cuts through. So the second step, mindset. Having the right mindset, this really is an essential point. Your key decision makers need to be blessed with sufficient brand appreciation. Let's put it in those terms. So what I mean when I say brand and we talk about brand is this. It's as simple as this. Think of your brand as far and away your most powerful strategic tool. Companies talk a lot about things like vision and mission. You hear those terms all the time, don't you? But it's the brand in action that is our personality, our look, our voice. Your brand defines planning and communication. It will motivate your people and your culture, and done properly, it can even lend persona to your spaces and places. Next slide, Jay, thanks. So when you frame it in that sense, there is a significant opportunity cost of not thinking about your brand in that way. If we can't present a consistent proposition, is it reasonable to expect customers to see one? I don't think it is. Are our customers making their intangible choices based on a thing that truly is our thing as a company? So a brand mindset is only strategic if your promise is expressed from top to bottom of your business, and then outside your business, back into suppliers and out into customers and commercial partners. And if you can't actually smell it in every touch point, you will fail on the essential challenge of distinction, because ultimately we're all in the business of being trusted and chosen because we are recognized and understood. The problem with that, of course, is that more often than not, management teams don't have consensus on many of the key brand definition questions, things like, what do we actually stand for? What customer problems do we really solve? How do our stakeholders or our audiences see us now versus how we want them to see us? So to meet that challenge, in a sense, brands have to connect in a deeper way. A little bit like this kiddie in the sweet shop. And to properly connect, I say that your brand needs the power of an idea. And this, for me, over the years, has been one of the most, I suppose you could call it, most universal rules of effective marketing, whether you're selling a tourist destination or a detergent. You are searching for an idea that encapsulates what it is that makes you unique and irresistible. Is your idea, in a sense, an automatic sort of light bulb moment, something authentic and engaging, something that people find simple to understand, simple to share, which is important, something that anchors all aspects of your proposition? And you can think about your brand idea a little bit, in a sense, as what people say about you when you leave the room. But we all know the problem with ideas. You know, they're hard to come up with and even harder to sell to the people that matter. So to illustrate that, if we think about a company like Apple, now, obviously not everyone's favorite company, but one example, if you like, of a brand idea that works. The idea that they fundamentally stand for is humanizing technology. That idea makes absolute sense, if you think about it, to the way in which every one of us relates personally to our Apple devices. You know, we just like that it works, don't we? The technical majesty inside your iPhone is more or less irrelevant to those of us who are buying the feeling that comes from shiny design and ease of use. So Apple's cloud continuity rescues us, doesn't it, from the anguish of having to redo all of that stuff again from the beginning. A problem that Apple has, of course, created for us. Problem and solution. So we pay a fortune to be synced in to the reassurance of that idea. Now, one measure going beyond Apple, one measure of the purity of a brand idea is, I call it compression of expression. Can your brand idea be expressed as a 2 or 3 word statement that is focused and authentic and ownable? Expression, getting to that pure idea can be a real challenge. And that challenge, I always say, is very well expressed. There's a much misattributed quote from a French mathematician called Blaise Pascal. I've seen Mark Twain try and steal the glory for this, but Blaise Pascal it was who originally said to a friend, "I'm sorry for writing such a long letter. I did not have the time to make it shorter," which to me encapsulates the challenge of getting to a pure and focused thought about your brand. Conciseness and brevity of thought are very tricky. Which takes us to the third of the 3 steps. And this is better news, because I say that there is a process that can help unlock your brand's distinction. First of all, it's important to see brand thinking as sharpening what already exists. You will already have equity and reputation and probably years of invested knowledge. The task of brand thinking is to shape that into a compelling idea. The second point is the process that I use, the process that I've seen used by other people, and the outputs of that process are very deliberately as simple as I can make them. And that in fact is its value as a process. The most compelling qualities that a business can have are consistency of action and simplicity of thought. Simple things are understood and remembered and shared. So what a good brand ultimately does is showcase confident, simple thinking. As far as the process is concerned, as a very broad outline, the process part of brand thinking typically has 4 phases, which you can see in this next chart. The discovery phase. We'll go into these in a little bit more detail, not much, but I'll touch on a slightly expanded version of these things. The discovery phase is essentially to know as much as we can possibly know and realize that we know it. The ideation phase is to make sense and structure out of that discovery and insight. The creation phase is allowing the brand idea to inspire the central components of your brand architecture. I'll describe what I mean by that. And then finally, activation, which is ensuring that your marketing plan and your marketing activity works to amplify your point of difference. And you'll hear more about that from me and from Push in a few minutes' time. So if we move on to discovery, of course, in a sense, this is the most critical phase. Think of discovery as discussion, review, and in a way, the search for something meaningful. It's the sort of self-immersion that you might have not done for a while. That's a good way of looking at it. It can be workshops, it can be small groups. I tend to favor one-to-one conversations with key stakeholders, then supplement those things with other aspects of the review, like communication study and perhaps some industry or sector case studies. The participants of your discovery stage should be certainly management, employees, ideally customers, ideally suppliers, perhaps some industry experts, other consultants I find to be highly useful, people who know stuff, you know, that they see in their day-to-day. Even competitors, actually. Competitors, you know, can be an interesting source of information. Anyone who can shine a light on your purpose and personality, your strengths and weaknesses. And discovery, remember, is sort of heavily rooted in both context and task. So where are we and how did we get here? And what actually is the business opportunity represented by refined brand thinking? And if you do it properly, the discovery phase should really bring simplicity to complexity. Can we see the wood from the trees and define what I call brand pillars? Brand pillars are those areas that will go on to inspire our brand idea, which takes us on to ideation, the second phase of the brand thinking process. Ideation is the task of identifying and further refining these pillars or insight groupings into authentic points of difference that offer the strongest competitive potential to your business. So it's a dial down of some of the insight that you found in the discovery process. So as a basic example, and these of course are generic, sometimes there's differentiation potential in perhaps claiming proprietary technology. But is it truly proprietary and unique, or at least can it be described and perceived in that way? Is that authentic? Is it true? And if it is unique, what is the customer language that avoids an overemphasis on features, for example, rather than benefits? Something that I see all the time in tech-related companies. As another example, perhaps a brand pillar could be that you have a distinctive product or service offering, distinctive, perhaps with distinction defined as functional benefits such as value or convenience, or emotional benefits like lifestyle appeal. Is your brand fundamentally about the fact that you love your customers the most? Is it that you understand how to make them feel special? Very often that is a point of difference. Maybe you do, but how then do you express that in a way that is relatable and trusted? And we can end up with 3 or 4 of these pillar areas from the ideation stage. Sometimes we actually migrate straight to one. It depends, you know, depends on what we discover. It's good to have options, I'll say that. But at the same time, too many pillars is not usually very helpful. It tends to suggest a lack of singularity. And the value in the ideation stage is to make those positioning hypotheses sufficiently distinct from one another so that there is a clarity and lack of overlap. If they're of broadly equal validity, they can be researched and tested. More usually, we look for alignment behind a lead differentiator prior to the detailed brand and messaging work being done, which is the third phase. If we move on to that, the third phase of the process, creation. This is always the hardest bit, working up that point of difference into the central components of your brand. And there are a lot of potential components, obviously, and you'll obviously be familiar with these terms, but just for the purposes of today, to give an illustration, Firstly, and critically, defining what your brand idea is. A 2 or 3 word expression of your truth. So if Disney, for example, promises magical experiences, or Dove skincare is about inner beauty, or trying to think of another one, Revlon all those years ago was so famously selling hope. What actually, stop and ask yourself, what actually is your brand idea? How are you seen? How are you known? We'll then also look at the purpose of your business. What we set out, what the purpose is, what we set out to do every morning. It's the end, not the means. Does your statement of purpose line up with your brand idea and bring that brand idea to life? Once we have those 2 things, we can write a brand proposition, or sometimes we call it a positioning statement. This is a few sentences only on what you are and what you do. Very often seen as your elevator pitch. People use that term a lot. It's the means to the purpose. It's the means to the end. That brand proposition can be expanded then into a brand narrative. That's a slightly longer statement which expresses your idea, your purpose, your proposition. You can think about that as sometimes you see that as an About Us tab on a website. That's the way to look at brand narrative. We can look at a tagline. People tend to like that stage of the process. The tagline exists to bring the brand promise to life and connect with the customer. It's important to remember that taglines are not the same thing as brand ideas. Taglines are the sort of user-friendly expression of that idea, the public expression of it. Another important element is the brand architecture, which I touched on earlier. It can be developed as a schematic layout of your product and personality traits, as well as a messaging hierarchy. Something that brings together in one useful place things like tone of voice, reasons to believe, desired audience response, all that good stuff. And beyond that, if it's relevant, we can look at company values. We very often help companies refine and add behavioral, I stress that word, behavioral descriptors for each of their existing values. And that's essentially to ensure that your brand promise can end up guiding company culture. It's very important that these things tie back to each other. And then, as important, and definitely in a sense it's lastly but not leastly, measurement strategies, very often forgotten. All of these attributes need to be measured. So what actually are your ongoing indicators for brand health? And then the 4th stage finally is activation. Activation connects those brand components to the much broader process, of course, of marketing planning. And Push will pick up the story of how specific aspects of the marketing mix can deliver a better return on your investment, assuming, of course, that you have the basis of a brand idea. But for now, I think it's helpful to think of the activation process as it's basically forcing yourself to ask if each piece of the puzzle is adding back up to your brand promise. That's the way I look at it. Does your website homepage, for example, sum up a clear distinction? Is your online advertising reinforcing that message in the right places and to the people we know to be receptive to it? Does your social media underline what you stand for? Does your CRM? Do your supplier relationships? Does your messaging or your corporate communication amplify and add back to your brand idea? All of these things come back to our starting and central contention that your marketing will hit the mark if there is a consistency of message and tone that consolidates your proposition and sets a customer expectation. And on that, lastly, one very significant brand activation that is always overlooked, is the opportunity that sits around employee engagement. It's not a human resources nicety. It's very much a commercial necessity. The advocacy and energy of your people. Does your brand truth inspire your people enough inside the business for them to pass it on spontaneously outside the business? It's an important question that very often gets overlooked. So let me quickly recap on some of the main points about brand thinking. A brand idea is your truth. It's the sum of how you are seen. It's your reason to be. Very often, that point of difference simply isn't established. The solution to establishing that difference and isolating your essential distinction is a mindset and a process that we call brand thinking. Brand thinking will make your marketing better. Better strategy, better websites, better advertising, better return on every dollar, pound, and dirham spent, if that activity constantly amplifies and reaffirms your essential purpose and personality. So you're looking for a singularity of proposition that your target audience understand, are happy to be associated with, and very importantly, happy to share. And if that singularity isn't to you and understood by everyone inside your business, you really can't expect a single customer to be able to recognize it. And a very last thought to bring the conversation right up to date. At the moment, we're all trying to make sense of what post-COVID really means. We're all in the same situation. One way to look at it is as an opportunity to make adjustments to your brand proposition that will expedite recovery. And I think that's important because it will soon, if not already, feel to customers as though they are about to make choices all over again. Something to think about, something to ask yourself. Are you ready for that? And with all that said, Jay, I'm going to hand the baton back to you and ask you to illustrate how having a brand idea can translate into more efficient marketing planning.
Thank you very much, Steve. That was excellent and so informative. A lot of the webinars, to be honest with you, that Push usually do are so focused on technical expertise within the platform. And we really are seeing the importance of businesses needing to get their brand right. The other thing that's been happening is there are more and more people jumping online now. The competition is fierce. We've got the Black Friday, the Christmas, the New Year sales all coming up, and everyone is trying to scramble online to get their propositions ready to discount heavily. And the people that have been online for years are going to have increased competition, which is going to increase their cost per clicks with more people in the auction. And so having that brand thinking right, having a good brand proposition, that's how they're going to retain customers. And in our last webinar with Google, there was actually a mention of, during this Black Friday period, how many people are willing to consider other brands that they have never shopped with before. So it really is so important. And I'm going to go on to talk a little bit more about the ways that we can tie in the two things together and how we can assist with helping grow the brands over time, and the kind of data that we can get from our campaigns that can help you with understanding your brand better and the needs of your consumers. So first of all, everything that we do when it comes down to paid advertising is always based on two metrics. It's the cost per click that we pay to drive someone to a website and the conversion rate of that website. And there are so many variables within each of the different platforms that affect this. So on Google Ads, for example, we control the bids, we write adverts which affect the cost per clicks, we can target and adjust those bids for different ages, genders, locations, devices. And then the conversion rate, part of that is the agency's responsibility. It's about the quality of the traffic we're sending to the website. And that's really determined by the kind of keywords that we're targeting and what we're writing in the adverts, making sure we're attracting the right sort of people for the site. But the other side of the conversion rate is the website experience. And part of that is how strong the brand is. And even when it comes to acquiring new customers for businesses, we don't want to just get you that single purchase or single lead. We want people to be engaging with you over time. And so this is why it's so important to have the right branding in place. The other thing is, everyone is looking at how they can grow their customer base. And let's say, for example, you're running on a platform like Google and you have maxed out the number of people that you can get to your site who are searching for your services. You therefore need to reach out to people. You need to use platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, appearing on banners on the display networks in order to convince people to engage with you. And that's why the strength of your brand is so important. Often when people explore these different types of campaigns, what they're looking for is, I spent X and I got X directly back from that campaign. And that's not the right way to measure things, as I'll go on to talk about. When we look at businesses who approach marketing with a full funnel approach, what we see is a 450% increase in qualified prospects. And the people that are taking the time to nurture and grow relationships with their customers are seeing 50% more sales at a 33% lower cost. This is a slide I use in a lot of webinars because it's so relevant. Most people, when they're investing in their marketing budgets, are so focused on the bottom, on the action, and they want to measure the agency and say, well, how much did you spend and what did I get back directly from that channel? Not understanding that all of these different channels tie in together. And what we really need to do, especially on platforms like Facebook and Instagram, is build your brand, make people aware of who you are and what you stand for, create interest, create desire, and only then can you get them to that point where they're ready to take action with you. And just an example of how an audience can move through a funnel. So if you're a fashion brand, for example, rather than putting adverts out to people and saying, here are my clothes, buy them. First of all, you can introduce everyone to your brand and the range of clothes. And at this stage, you're just trying to get a sense of, do they like the styles that I have? Then what you follow up with is more about you. So you talk about the inspiration behind the pieces, the quality of the fabrics that you've used. And then you create the desire, showing how different pieces can be worn for different occasions, the type of women or men that you want to reach with your pieces, what statements they're making by wearing them. And at the very bottom is the people that then begin searching for the products. And there's also the people that come to your site and don't buy. You need to be remarketing to those people, telling them more about you, convincing them to come back and buy. And it's not always just showing them, here's what you looked at before, come back and buy it. You can talk to them about other things that you're doing. Lots of people ask people to sign up to their email list, and you've got to think about, well, if they're signing up to my email list, what are they going to get in return? And really understand who your audiences are, why they would want to engage with your brand. The other thing to mention is, in terms of marketing campaigns, the cheapest form of traffic you will get is people that come to your website directly, because that's free. And that's what you want to do when you're building your brand over time. Get people to come back to your site directly, not necessarily have to be clicking through the ads. And some people will search for your brand on Google, and sometimes there will be competitors advertising under your brand, which is why we always have brand campaigns to protect people from that. And again, that's a very cheap form of traffic. It has the lowest cost per click, as you're the most relevant search result on the platform if someone's searching for your brand. A competitor trying to advertise above you, they'll pay a little bit more in order to do that. So how can we use the data that we get from the platforms to help us understand our customers and what parts of our brand resonate with them the most? Well, first of all, when you're running Google Ads campaigns, there is a section in there where you can get audience data. You can actually adjust your bids according to that audience data, but it tells us two things. First of all, you have these in-market audiences. So what these show us is everyone that has been to the website, what have they recently been searching for? What are they in the market for? And Google is combined with YouTube, so it has all of this data. It knows what we're searching for. It knows what websites we visit, how long we spend on them, what pages we look at. It knows what videos we're watching on YouTube afterwards. And so it gives us an idea of the in-market audiences. What are the people coming to our site interested in right now? And that can give you some really great insights into your user behavior. So for example, I took a look at a business selling computer parts, and naturally all the people that were coming to their website were people interested in lots of different electronic devices. And then when we had a look at, well, what are the people that actually convert on your site? What are they interested in? And we found actually that a lot of them were interested in luxury cars, for example. So it highlights that the people that will actually buy from you are the people who are interested in other more luxury lifestyle purchases, and it suggests that you should be targeting the more affluent users, and those are the people that are going to buy from you. You also have data on affinity audiences as well. So the affinity audiences are basically telling you what people are generally interested in. These are the types of things that they always look at online, and that behavior hasn't changed over time. Understanding and using this audience data, you can actually tailor your ads to those audiences. So let's go back to a fashion example. Let's say on the fashion website, I happen to notice that there's lots of indications that the in-market audience is showing me that people are also looking at prams and nappies and diapers and so on. It might indicate that my audience is heavily made up of young or mums, and I can see that from age to the age of the people coming to my site as well. So let's just say it's young mums. You can tailor your adverts and create messages specifically for them that are going to appeal to them. With Facebook, when you're creating campaigns, you can actually create a campaign to build that entire multi-market funnel. And you have the different stages. So you can run campaigns for brand awareness. You can run campaigns to generate traffic, to get people to watch a video and people to convert on your website. And most of the times when I audit marketing accounts and I go into the Facebook ad platform, people generally just have a campaign set up for conversions because that's all they care about. I'm spending X and I just need to get sales back from it. And they forget that when people are on Facebook and Instagram, they're there because they wanted to look at pictures. They didn't go on the platforms to start shopping. So you really have to reach out to them, stand out, make them aware of who you are. And then you've got to persuade them to come to you. And you need to do that sometimes over time. People are not always ready to have their user journey interrupted. So it's why part of your strategy should be about giving people useful content and not just shoving sales messages down their throats. When we build campaigns for customers on Google and Facebook, it's really important for us to try and understand who these people are as best as possible. And it's about finding out everything we can use to target them on the platforms. So Facebook and Instagram in particular are very good for this because we can target by so many different interests. So you may say, you know, we're a B2B company and all our customers are SMEs. Well, it's about understanding, well, the type of people that you're speaking to, what are their professional roles in the business? Because we can target by job title industry. What other brands might they like? Where do they shop? What TV shows or movies do they watch? What publications do they read? Are they on the Forbes website? Have they read particular business books? And what areas do they live in? Understanding all of this and creating these different personas helps us create different adverts for each of those personas, because there'll be different elements of your brand that each of these personas will care about and will engage with better. So when we work with customers, what we typically do is create 5 new avatars per month. And we combine all this different targeting together and try and figure out where the overlaps are, which of these different interests are the ones that engage with our ad copy the best. And it really is all about A/B testing on the platform. So taking the different elements of your brand, advertising those different elements to all the different audiences. And a lot of testing has to happen on these platforms. When people want to start running campaigns on Facebook and Instagram, yes, it can work from day one. You could get sales instantly. However, it's something that takes time and learning if you want to scale and grow. And so I always set the expectation, you should give this at least 3 to 6 months in order to understand and gather data that's going to help you grow performance on the platform. Because we're testing lots of different creatives. And just in terms of the types of creatives, we're testing videos, we're testing slideshows of images, single images, and then we're testing different messages within that against these different audiences, against different placements on the platform, whether it's on the story section of Facebook or whether it's an Instagram post. And then you're testing all of that against all of the different campaign objectives that you can set up from the slide I showed you earlier. Even on platforms like Amazon, you can do things that help you build your brand and make your product feel and look more trusted. And what we actually see when we have, there's an option on Amazon to actually create brand registry sections so that you can put more information in the description, and you can actually build a page which is a storefront. So if people click on your brand, they will go to this storefront page. What we've seen is sellers that are using that storefront and using brand registry are converting up to 30% more than the people that don't. So it just shows the importance of having an established brand, showing people what you stand for. It helps build trust with them, and trust is what gets them to buy from you. YouTube. YouTube is a very difficult thing to sell to people. And I'll tell you why. It's because when we run campaigns on YouTube, very, very often they don't lead to direct conversions. And there's a statistic I had from Google which said 56% of businesses that run YouTube campaigns switch them off. But by 2021, 80% of the world's internet traffic is going to be video content. And right now, YouTube is one of the cheapest forms of traffic that you can get. The problem is people are not measuring it in the correct way. They're looking for direct revenue from the campaigns. With YouTube, what you actually want to do is use the same approach as Facebook and nurture people down a funnel. So this is an example of how you might advertise, for example, a TV show. So you can have a bumper ad show of the trailer, a trailer of the show, and that's a 6-second unskippable ad. You then follow up with a longer advert and you can see how many people watch that. And if people are watching the 80% of that video, you can then follow them up with interviews of the cast, other information about the show. And it's about understanding, how do we keep on engaging with people, and people that don't engage with a particular advert, how do we test another one for those audiences that didn't like the first one we put out? We actually have access to a beta from Google. It's one of the advantages of our channel partnership, that if you have any video content, we can actually instantly create 6-second adverts with that. And if your video is 2 minutes long, that's lots of different adverts that we can create and test to see how your audience engage with that. Most people, when they're looking at YouTube, they're looking for case studies like this. They're looking for us to tell them, we've run a YouTube campaign and we got a fantastic return on advertising spend. We generated direct revenue from that. And that isn't always what happens. What you really want to be looking at when you're running these YouTube campaigns is, first of all, the engagement. Were people watching this? Were they interested? Were they sharing it? Were they liking? Were they commenting? And then what you want to look at is, over time, am I seeing more people visit my site through organic, which is the free results on Google, coming directly to my website, or are they searching for my brand on Google? And all of that is measurable. Then there's remarketing. So if you think about how many websites you visit in a day, you don't engage with every single one. You don't buy from all of them. There'll be times where you come back to websites, and it may be several times. You may be comparing products or services to lots of other businesses and not sure about your decision. And remarketing really presents an opportunity for you to engage with people, to tell them more about you, to tell them more about your brand. Most people, when they run remarketing strategies, it's literally showing them what they looked at, or a very simple banner just trying to get them to come back to the site. And you can be so much more creative with remarketing. We really encourage testing and creativity in all aspects of the user journey. With remarketing, you can have a remarketing banner, which is just telling people about what your brand is doing. What you have to consider is, people that have come to your site, there's all this information they may not have looked at. For example, there's probably loads of great stuff on your About Us page. But if you think about all the sites you visit when you're shopping, do you always visit the About Us page to learn more about the brand? And there are some great elements that actually, if you put those elements in front of people, perhaps they would be more inclined to buy from you. So again, I go back to fashion just because it's an easy example for everyone to comprehend. If I go to a website and I've just looked at some clothes and then I've left, and then all you do is show me the clothes, what I might not learn is that these are eco-friendly fabrics, it's sustainable. I might not get the message of what you guys care about. What is your purpose? The quality of the fabrics. Again, that's something that you won't always see when you go to a website and you just browse through clothes. So there's loads of opportunities to present aspects of your brand back to people if you just get a bit more creative with your strategy. And again, when we're talking about your brand proposition, how you refine that, that's testing. There may be things when you think about what you think people are interested in about your brand. Actually, from the advert testing, you might realize, well, these elements of our brand, they don't actually care about that. That's not something they engage with. And that's what Steve mentioned earlier about that lack of connection. Sometimes we're pushing elements of our businesses to people that don't appeal to them. And so through ad testing, you can understand what elements are actually important, what elements help persuade them and bring them down that marketing funnel and convince them that you are the brand they want to buy from. And remarketing really is essential, because this is how you are continuously engaging with people. Again, a lot of people, when they're remarketing people, they'll exclude the people that have already converted and become a customer. But it's a very cheap opportunity, because you only pay if people click on your site to, again, keep on engaging with people after they bought from you. So after they've bought from you, showing them messages about what your brand is doing and what your brand is about. If they don't click it, you haven't paid anything for it. It's like having a free internet billboard. So there's no reason why you can't target the converting audiences with new messages to keep on engaging with them. And that could be aligned with your any kind of email marketing strategy that you have in place. And that brings me on to email marketing. So email marketing is incredibly important. The ROI for email marketing is $42 back for every dollar spent. And it's definitely an essential part of any business's strategy. Push are actually partnered with Digital, and this is a new partnership. So if anyone is interested and needs help with email marketing, it's something that Push can provide. Essentially, with email marketing, the challenge is understanding what content your users are going to be interested in. And again, it comes through testing. If all you email your database about is sales and special offers, they're not going to open those emails if they know that's all they're going to get. It's about understanding what useful content can you show them, what can you tell them about the brand, and each time you can measure what's happening. You can understand, we sent people an article about something that we've been doing, or an article about our brand. Did they click it? Once they got to the site, how long did they spend on that page? Did they leave after 2 seconds, or did they spend a good 40 seconds reading the information on that page? So everything that you do is measurable, and that's what's so great about digital marketing. Finally, just some points about how we look at digital marketing. So what I spoke about earlier is most people that I speak to, they're looking at their campaign and they're saying, I spent X and it's showing me this many conversions back, and this was the cost per conversion, this was my return on advertising spend. And we call that efficiency. How efficient is your account running? What you want to see is a good return on advertising spend. That's what everyone wants to see from their marketing. But actually, what we're seeing people need to move to now is understanding effectiveness, because everything has got so much more fragmented. We've got people coming to your website via lots of different devices, via lots of different channels, and new ones are popping up all the time. You know, what's going to come after TikTok? There's always a new platform to consider. Pinterest, which is something that I would have been honestly told you is quite a dead platform before, saw a massive rise in popularity during the pandemic, and it's now a big part of marketing strategies for a lot of our customers. So there's always something new coming out. And effectiveness is measuring the contributions of each of the marketing strategies across those platforms and how they've helped you grow the overall sales for your business. There's a quote from a professor of marketing. Marketing campaigns are generally becoming less effective, and ironically, that's because of a growing focus on ROI. With all of these platforms on Google and Facebook, even on Amazon, a lot of the bidding is target driven, and most people are putting in a figure and saying, you know, we want to get this many sales at this level of return. We want 1,000% return on our spending. We're trying to increase the profit we get from this campaign as much as possible. And what they forget is that in order to grow, that return advertising spend often has to be sacrificed. When you're using these automated bidding strategies, what you're telling Google and Facebook is limit how much you show me to people, because I want to get this return. And that means I can't pay a certain cost per click. I don't want to be appearing to people that are not going to buy from me unless I get that return. And so the platform is trying to figure out the best locations, the best people, ages, genders, devices, taking all those signals into account, and it will limit how often it shows you to meet that target. And what I say is, if you're trying to go through a growth phase, you've either got to relax that target to give the automated bidding more room to breathe, more room to test, and you've got to also consider the cost of acquiring a customer. What is their lifetime value? You'd be surprised at a number of businesses I speak to that have no idea what the lifetime value of a customer is, and they only focus on the cost to get that first sale in, and don't consider that actually I could break even on getting that customer in, because I know they're going to buy from me over and over again if I have a good retention and email marketing strategy in place. So what we say is ROI is a measure of efficiency, not a measure of total effectiveness. And this is the ideal conversion path for any business. This is what good branding can deliver. If you invest in brand and don't turn it off because you're not seeing direct sales from the campaigns, then over time you will have more and more people coming to your website direct. But until that day comes, this is what conversion paths look like when we go into our customers' analytics. It's lots of different touch points over time. And as Steve mentioned, we need to make sure across all of those different touch points, the brand message that you have is consistent. And that is what makes your campaigns more effective. So that is the end of today's webinar. A few things just to mention. So if you'd like to know anything more, you can speak to myself and Steve. We'll be sending out an email to you guys with all of our details so that you can contact us. And there is a ebook that Steve's written on brand thinking, which we'll be sending everyone a free copy of as well. In particular, what we're offering, a free review of your digital marketing strategy. There's no obligation to sign up to anything afterwards. It's just us taking a look at your campaigns, telling you what's good, what's bad, what opportunities you're missing out on. If you're interested in how you go about building that full funnel strategy, get in touch with us. And Steve's also offering a free 15-minute consultation call on brand strategy, which is so important, especially in this upcoming period. So I encourage all of you to use his wisdom and take advantage of that. Thank you so much, everyone. As I mentioned, we'll be sending a copy of this webinar to everybody. Please share it with anyone that you think it's relevant for, and let us know your feedback anytime. Thank you very much. Take care.